Building a great car starts with a solid foundation, and that's often the hardest part of any project. This is my mom's '69 Camaro. It's a car she's always dreamed of, and I'm putting everything I can to make it as fun to drive as it is to look at. My main focus: reliability, safety, and most importantly, power. I used a 2-part chassis paint from Eastwood to give the parts a protective coating that I can easily touch up later on if they get scratched or chipped. I can fully assemble and tighten these control arms before installed due to the steel sleeve inside the bushings. Caster is set using these offset drilled inserts. These will either push the wheel forward towards the front of the car or back towards the rear wheels, effectively changing the length of the wheelbase. I'm going to set this as 0 for now, just to get a feel for the car and how it drives and change it later on. I can adjust camber or the tilt with these purple shims. The anti-roll bar or sway bar will immensely help handling and is one of my favorite upgrades to any car. This will get connected to the lower control arms later when the weight is on the suspension. Doing some light bodywork to the firewall, and I emphasize light because my metalwork is, let's just say, I learned a lot on this car. But I don't want to put a thick layer of filler on it because it's likely to chip off and I'll be mounting a lot of stuff to the firewall anyway. In fact, it's just better if you don't look at it. I didn't check to see if the epoxy was mixed well before spraying. Oh well. Let it dry, sand it off, and try again. With the front end wrapped up, it's time to tackle the rear axle. The previous owner installed a RideTech 4-link kit, but I don't trust the welds. There's a lot of porosity, so I'm grinding them down and re-welding them to make sure everything is solid and safe. Once that's done, I'll clean off years of built-up grime and give it a fresh coat of paint and get it back under the car. I'm really not too concerned with this axle. It's just a 10-volt rear end, which may or may not last very long. I have my sights set on a Ford 9-inch or a built 12-bolt in the future, so we'll see what happens. Unlike the factory single piston floating caliper brakes, these Willwood brakes need to be shimmed so that the brake pads on each side of the rotor are equal spaced. This ensures they clamp the rotor evenly and don't put more pressure on one side. Now I can move one of these shims on the caliper bolts to shift the brake caliper inward. This intake won't add any performance gains, purely for aesthetic reasons. I originally planned on using this Holley MSD Atomic EFI, but I decided it would be better for reliability and ease of diagnosis if I upgraded to a new Holley system. Setting up my fuel rails with these 60 pound per hour Dietzwerks injectors. These should be sized a little big to give me room to grow as I dial in the car and add more power. Part of the fun of mixing and matching parts is finding out things like these injector O-rings are a little too large to fit into the intake. No problem though, just fit some slightly smaller ones and it's good to go. I also have to drill some new holes on the fuel rail mounting tabs since these injectors are shorter than what this was designed for. This fuel tank is from Tanks Inc. It makes switching to fuel injection super easy. I'll be using 6 AN lines to supply fuel, which should be enough for the power I want. The cast iron truck blocks are different from the aluminum ones in that they're missing 2 holes for mounting accessories on the front of the block. I should have used a drill template. Mistakes are inevitable, and I've learned to see them as opportunities to grow. Chasing perfection at every step will only slow you down or stop you altogether. So you deal with it and you move on. I think getting this blower bolted on that'll fix everything. First time seeing inside the engine, and it's pretty clean. Another issue with mismatched parts. This elbow from the supercharger kit is designed for the truck intake manifold. I'll have to get a different one. The LS is internally balanced, so that means the crank pulley is not keyed to the crank. It's normally a press fit, so I'll use this crank pinning kit to drill a matching hole on the crank and the pulley. This will keep it from spinning on the crank at higher boost. I've got somewhat of a mix of accessory parts, so I have to come up with a custom way of routing the belt. This is just going to be straight up trial and error. I changed the provided 115-inch belt to 112-inch. Now to work on getting the engine fired up. I'll start with the injector harness. Each wire is labeled, so it's a pretty straightforward process of plugging it in. Plugging in the throttle position sensor, followed by the idle air control valve. Plugging in the coolant temperature sensor, then the injector harness. The ignition coil plugs are labeled even and odd. Odd goes to the driver's side for cylinders 1, 3, 5, and 7. Plugging in the oil pressure sensor and the camshaft sensor. Plugging in the crankshaft sensor located above the starter. No intercooler for now, but I have plans for one after it's got a few miles. O2 sensor is in, but it won't read correctly until the exhaust is extended. This harness works for the 4L60 and 4L80 transmissions. It's very simple, just 2 plugs, the main harness and the speed sensor. I'm installing the main body harness so I can supply power to the Holley ECU. I'm going to remove the unnecessary wires from the harness to simplify it. Installing some AN fittings to attach to the fuel rails. The fuel pressure sensor is optional, but I wanted the ability to monitor my fuel pressure, especially as I dial in the car and the boost. I used a Deutsch connector to connect the fuel pump to 12 volts positive and then grounded right to the body. The main power supply harness is connected directly to the battery and then plugged into the ECU. The ignition switch is powered on to start up the Holley ECU and set the base parameters. I also need to bridge the connector for the neutral safety switch. Before any settings can be changed, the throttle position sensor must be calibrated. Now I can go through the wizard to tell the ECU what the engine is and get a base startup tune. For an engine using Holley parts or factory parts, this wizard will set everything needed to get it up and running. In my case, I have injectors that are not standard in Holley's library, so I will need to use the laptop software to manually input how my injectors work. I want to hear it run, so I'm just going to select another 60 pound/hour injector and see if it works. I wouldn't recommend it if you care about your engine, but I'm not trying to rev it to the moon on its first start, so it should be fine. I'm just inputting some generic settings for now. The Holley will self-tune once the engine reaches 160 degrees, so all of this will get dialed in after I put the car together. So I decided to finally investigate why my fuel pump is screaming, and yeah, it's been trying to push over 100 psi of fuel for a while. Let me just go ahead and scooch that back down to 60. So it turns out this extension that was plugged into the sensor does not line up with the plug on the new harness. So I'm going to get rid of that extension and it should fire right up now. Bam. Well, it's currently 10 o'clock at night and might make the neighbors mad, but I'm going to do it anyway. Upon further inspection, I found I left one of the main power wires not connected.
Just go straight in.
Oh, full send. Okay.
Yeah, full send. I think the fuel pump is starving. It's 93 psi right now.
It's hungry.
She's screaming. Oh, I'm still shaking. Is it changing? Is it backing down?
You're at 90, 81, 89. 89,
Alright, yeah, that should back down.
88, 89, 88.
Alright.
This fuel is popped back. Do you think you might need more gas in her?
Fire. Probably running too rich. Alright. Say fire in the hole, but I don't want there to be fire.
From the hole. Let it rip, take a chip.
Alright, hit it.
Alright.
Oh man!
I love it. Every time.
That's so great. Oh yeah, I need to switch the fuel pump wire. It's probably sucking too much juice through the main harness. Injectors are definitely not sized right. I gotta change those.
I fixed the vacuum leaks from the map sensor port and the blow-off valve hose, but it's still running terrible due to not having the correct injector settings. Time to set up the injectors properly. Use a CAN to USB cable to connect the harness to a laptop, then download the file from the Holley ECU. Connect to the ECU with the laptop by clicking the USB link at the very top. This downloads the data from the car. If you use the handheld wizard to set the base parameters, those are already saved, and now you can adjust the custom settings for what you need. In my case, I'm going to click on the little EFI icon at the top and start copying my injector data over. Basically, the computer just needs to know how much fuel the injectors flow at what voltage. The only things I am changing are my actual system pressure and my fuel injector information. I'm going to have my regulator set at 60 psi, so I'll base my injector settings on that. Now I just copy over the off time ratings based on 58 psi, pretty much 60. Based on the 58 psi rating, these injectors will flow 72.67 pounds per hour, so make sure to change that as well. Now I just copy everything over, quick paste, and everything is good. Now I just need to send this updated info back to the vehicle ECU, so just click USB link again and sync ECU. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can see when I give this car back to my mom. Thanks for watching.